Magister Dixit. Magister Dixit. Magister Dixit. Magister Dixit.
Welcome to Magister Dixit, a podcast that invites you on a journey into realms of expertise, imagination, and occultism. Delve deep into the minds of those that have dedicated their lives to mastering their crafts, and how having an esoteric or supernatural influence has shaped that path. In each episode, we will engage with magisters, true masters of their respected fields, as they share their unparalleled insights, unconventional knowledge, and their unique perspectives. Venture into the mystical as we converse with filmmakers, musicians, and renowned authors. Listen to their perspectives on their respected disciplines and how being a practitioner of occultism has influenced their craft. Remember, in the realm of knowledge, Magister Dixit, the master has spoken. Martin McGreggor is an individual whose journey is as rich and diverse as the mosaic of his interests. Martin wears many hats within the realm of Satanism and spirituality. As an author and prolific writer-blogger, he delves deep into the intricate layers of Satanism, sharing his insights, experience, and knowledge with a global audience. Through his thought-provoking writings, Martin provides valuable guidance and perspective on various aspects of Satanism, magic, and spirituality, enriching the discourse within the community. As an integral part of the Twisted Tree Abbey, Martin contributes to the development of rituals, practices, and teachings that aim to empower individuals on their spiritual journeys. Through his work, Martin embodies the principle of community, collaboration, and enlightenment, helping others navigate their paths with wisdom and authenticity. Let's welcome Martin to the show. Okay, first off, Martin, I'd like to welcome you to Magister Dixit. And I always like to start off by having the guests share a bit about their upbringing and their early life experiences and the things that have influenced your journey into Satanism and your later career pursuits.
Okay, perfect. No, that's great. So I was actually raised in a Baptist household, and I guess it was originally Catholic. And my grandpa kind of left the faith. I was raised in my grandparents' house with my dad. And I was, they left the Catholic Church. I was raised Baptist. My grandma was the only one that really took me to church or anything. And it never really resonated with me, even from the very beginning. In Sunday school, like I would get into it with my Sunday school teachers over really like inane stuff that people in that position sometimes feel compelled to kind of stand on a hill with. And even back then, it didn't resonate with me. I didn't feel that connection. So in my teenage years, I kind of transitioned into like an agnostic viewpoint. I felt like something was there. I felt connection. Just not to what I had been exposed to yet. And I lived in that existence for a while. And right around I was graduating high school, my best friend at the time got into some online resources that were coming available right around then. This was in like literally 2001, 2002. So the internet was still kind of the Wild West as far as Satanism is concerned. There were some really good resources. There were some really bad resources. And it was really a mixed bag where you were getting your information from. There were some great resources. Tezrian's Vault, which S. Connolly was running even back then, was a great resource. There were a lot of them. I remember.
Did you have a local bookstore?
I really didn't. And well, I should say there probably were, but I just wasn't aware of them. I wasn't tuned into the community enough then. Like I was just thinking about this the other day. I was literally the kid that in the off chance I'd been taken to the mall to go and get some clothes or something, the parents would go off and do something, and I'd get, I could go and roam the bookstore, and I would be in, like a Borders or something like that, and I'd be going to their occult section looking for whatever I could find, and it's always the Necronomicon and stuff like that. And generally back then, you wouldn't even find a Satanic Bible back then. So right whenever I was graduating high school, though, is when we started finding the internet resources a lot more. And we just started studying. I have to credit my best friend a lot. He really got into it, and that pulled me into it. And then I think we kind of flip-flopped, where I started to feel a much deeper connection than maybe he did. Satanism is a mixed bag. It has a lot of very colored history to it. It has a lot of colored present to it. And, I think he got pushed away by some of the things that didn't necessarily, bother me as much. So I started my journey. And as soon as I started reaching out to the other side of things, to Satan and to the demonic, I felt an immediate connection. And that is what really fueled my next, 10 years of just studying and practicing and doing my own thing. And that's really kind of my origin story. I came up the same way a lot of people do these days. I was on the message boards, and I was on the forums, and I was listening to all the different opinions and trying to read a book or here or there whenever I could afford one. And
right, wherever you could find it.
Yeah.
Did you eventually find any mentors or influential figures who maybe helped play a significant role in shaping your beliefs?
I would have to say in those early days, I really connected just with the words of LaVey. Maybe not so much the man, but the words in the Satanic Bible, the first couple times I wrote it, really changed my life, really said, okay, wow, there are, like, it's okay to believe some of the things I believe. And that really helped me. And then as I started going forward, I found Michael Aquino. And I never had a chance to interact with him personally or speak to him. But some of his works really then began to shape my work even more. And
do you think that's because of the less of the atheist approach and more of a deity, or the involvement of more of like Egyptian set style view of Satan?
I think you're touching on probably what I gravitated more towards. In particular, the Diabolican really spoke to me so heavily. And to this day, I feel like that's one that it's, to me, an undeniably inspired and touched work. And it really set down probably the first real work that I feel was channeled. It really was. This is a message from these spirits. It was one of the first times I encountered work that I legitimately felt that way. So when I read it, and particularly that work, and then reading more about his history, I would probably say that's the closest thing to a mentor I had in my very early days. And it was a rough road for me. It was, I had a lot of really hard times, and do I believe and do I not, and all those things that people generally, have when they're having legitimate, genuine spiritual beliefs and trying to follow them. And I see the same things I saw in Aquino, in early LaVey. And then, I think things got complicated, as they do. And especially when you are expected to represent an entire belief, an entire faith, and you're in the public spotlight the way he was, I think that's going to invariably change the way you communicate and change the way that you present your ideas, and that's invariably going to cause some confusion. And I think that also touches on something that's very important to Satanism, that it needs, that no one is talking about, if you're a solitary practitioner, it's something that plagues you. And if you're a group practitioner, if you're in a coven or a group, generally the leadership is not trying to push this message, which is it's okay to change your beliefs about Satanism and Satan. And that may be something that legitimately happened to LaVey, is his beliefs and concepts about the deity we know as Satan changed throughout the decades. And I think that's something that needs to be allowed. Yeah, I think that's something that it was a good thing to touch on, because it's something I've been thinking about that is needed in Satanism.
Absolutely. And a couple of points that I'd like to bring forward. First off, you getting into Satanism in the millennia. And what's interesting is that's already post-satanic panic, and really a lot of the internal combat within the temple is set, and also in Church of Satan. So it's kind of really after the dust is settled from all of that stuff. And, and what you're basically saying still is that, it's a very tumultuous thing, when several people get together, with a philosophy or a religion, and hence why Aquino left LaVey and went and did his own thing. And later on, when they were losing a lot of membership, they needed people like Dr. Stephen Flowers and Don Webb to kind of reinvent the Temple of Set, because after a year or two or three, they didn't really have anything, post or pre that, they didn't really have anything else to offer people. So people would kind of be involved for 2 or 3 years, and then they would move on to something else because there was no other higher levels or anything like that. So there was a whole evolution that took place at that point. So but with you coming in in the 2000s and stuff, and saying about finding the books at B. Dalton, I'm more of a teen of the 80s, and same thing, we had the B. Daltons and stuff, and a lot of what the people who would be outraged that that type of book was being sold, they would rip the covers off, and then the bookstore wouldn't be able to sell the covers, so, and you grew up in St. Louis, right?
I did, and
how did your family and friends react to your interest in Satanism and the occult and how you began exploring these topics? Because I picture a kid from St. Louis, this isn't the common thing.
It really wasn't. I would have to say that I would have to credit the friends group that I was a part of. At that time, I had a very actually broad friend group, but most of them were either nerdy enough that they were open-minded enough that they would at least talk to me about it. And then others were a deep enough connection already that they were like, okay, well, let's talk about it then. So I at least always had I had the opportunity to have that conversation first. And I know a lot of people don't. It's a knee jerk, let's fight about it before we talk about it. And I didn't get a lot of that with my family. It was a lot of, this is going to be a phase. This is just going to be something he's into now. And, we'll talk to him later, whenever he comes out of it. For some of them, it's still kind of, I guess, in that vein. Others, I know would rather me not be, and that's fine. I would rather them not be Christian.
How was your parents' acceptance once they realized it wasn't a phase for you and this was actually a pursuit of yours?
My mom wasn't really around for a long time. I've come to have a better relationship with my mom as I've grown older, post-adulthood. But my dad raised me, and he's always been very supportive. I can't say super supportive, but accepting at the very least. And then we kind of have a back and forth relationship with it. I don't think he is upset that it's a pursuit of mine or something I've written books about and made a part of my life. I think he regrets and he regrets and mourns the position that Satanism is in within the world, and thus what that's going to impact upon me and possibly my family. So,
or at least a Baptist view of.
Exactly. See that, and that is his entire concern, the outside perception of it. And I doubt he's internalized as much as I have what real Satanism actually is and what it does for people. And then maybe he would see why I'm so passionate about fighting for it. And I don't mind having all of the misconceptions around it because it's worth fighting for.
Absolutely. I mean, you've written extensively on Satanism and demonology, and like, what inspires you to explore these topics? Do you draw from personal experience? Is it just research, or is it a combination of both?
It's kind of a combination of both, and then it's an internalization of Satanism itself, of me trying to practice the things that I write about and I espouse. So when I see things occurring and I feel like I have a voice that isn't being represented yet, that nobody is saying this, and I think this would contribute to the conversation, that's generally when I'll take action. So whenever I wrote my first book, which I meant to have some out here and I didn't, when I wrote Paths to Satan, it was a response to essentially what we were just talking about, like people not knowing what Satanism really is, and then hearing about Satanism and what it is from people who have no clue about what Satanism is, and basically just being allowed to talk about it in any way that they want to and just throw anything they want at it. No, this is Satanism and that is too. And it's like, well, no, hold on. I am a Satanist. This is what I do, this is what I live, and this is what I do, and this is what I live. So if we're going to talk about Satanism, then let's talk to the Satanists about it.
Well, much is under the umbrella of Satanism these days.
There's
you have things like the Temple of Satan,
Satanic Temple.
Yeah, the Satanic Temple, and you have like the Church of Satan, but then you have like, the Order of Nine Angles and things like that, and more darker esoteric versions of Satanism. And, they all fall within the spectrum now that we call Satanism, but they're very, very different from each other, from people who believe in Satan as an actual deity to people who are just using that word as a shocking attraction to their maybe liberal lifestyle.
You're seeing a lot of both. You really are. And this is something that a really good friend of mine and someone who has become a little bit more of a mentor of mine in later on in life, particularly once I started writing books, was Bill Duvendak. And Bill, in one of the workshops that I sat in on at the last pagan picnic here in St. Louis, was talking about the age of Aquarius and about how people were talking about the switch and how we're going to be in the age of Aquarius now. It's going to be so different. And he had a really great presentation, and not to boil it down and put words in his mouth or anything, but what I took away from that presentation was the multiple thousand-year age that we've been in has been an age of people doing one thing and saying another. So this is our outward message while we go off and do this thing. And I think Satanism in the late 20th century still exhibited that. And I think as the organizations grew and became bigger, it exhibited more and more of that. And now today, as these ages are shifting, which it's going to be a massive timeline. I'm not saying that this is actually happening like right now, but I think we're starting to see the beginnings of organizations that actually do what they say they're doing and believe what they believe. There's congruence there. And I think in both the mainstream satanic organizations, you do have that element of we're Satanists, but we're not. We're the Church of Satan, but Satan isn't real. It's a metaphor in this. And then TST the same way.
If you were defined
the giant flavoring of political activism.
Yeah, if you were defined by what is on the media, you know, you would think that a Satanist is more just a political activist.
Yeah, and I always try to be fair. I really do. And as much as I see the drawbacks of these organizations, and I wind up talking about them quite a bit because they are the issues surrounding our faith right now. You have to give credit where credit is due. And the Church of Satan started it all for us. They really did. Anton LaVey, love him, hate him, he did the founding work. And everything that has come forward since then, for the most part, has been in big part to him. There is many examples of Satanism that predate the Church of Satan and Anton LaVey, but he founded the Church of Satan.
Right,
So
and he was into a lot of things prior to that. He was a ceremonial magician. He liked Crowley very much. In fact, at the Black House, they had a portrait of Crowley on the wall.
you know, people want to really reduce people down to a job or two they had before something, or all these things. And you know, LaVey was a whole ass person. He was a whole damn person with, you know, history and
he was seeking that knowledge the same way that we are, and he read everything. You know, I'm sure it was Golden Dawn stuff into Crowley, into
everything that he had available to him.
Yes.
You know, and along the same coin, I want, you know, you have to give the Satanic Temple the attention and credit that they are due. You know, they are fighting fights that do need to be fought. They're doing a lot of the work where we need representation. We do, and they're doing it. There have been a couple different examples here in just the last week where they're taking legitimate legal action against things that do need to occur.
We just had that veteran that chopped the head off of the Satanic Temple's idol in, what was it, Iowa?
Yeah. And then I'm going to forget the state. I don't think it's Iowa. I think it might be Nebraska or something like that. But they, one of their senators, I think, just tried to pass a bill saying that specifically satanic displays cannot be erected on state property. And, you know, they immediately took him to court. They should. That's awesome.
As they should, absolutely.
And we need to, what should be happening is now a bunch of other Satanists should be taking action as well, and supporting what they have started. So you have to give them credit too, but then we also have to circle back around that you don't get better at Satanism by running away from Satan. And a lot of the lessons that are really important get lost whenever you take the deity out of it and you take the something greater than yourself out of it. And let alone forget the fact that Satan is real and he exists and you can interact with him. Like, let's just put that aside. There are other reasons why having something greater to believe in, it actually keeps you a lot truer to what you say your beliefs are.
Now, how do you envision the future of Satanism, both its terms culturally, its impact, and its place in the broader religious and spiritual landscapes?
I see a lot of possibilities, and some of them are fantastic, and others are probably so dire that I don't even want to voice them. I think we're coming up on a really transformative time for particularly the United States. And how that transformation happens and how Satanists take part in it is going to dictate our future.
It's definitely a super important year. And I think the electricity by August, you'll be able to light the air with a match.
Well, you know, you touched on it earlier about, you know, people used to be ripping the books off of covers in the bookstores. And if I'm honest, I came up right at the right time to not experience a whole lot of that. I really have, in that regard, I live in America and I get to believe what I want to believe type of existence. And now is when, particularly in this area, we're starting to see an uptick of things where people don't want that to be the case anymore.
And you
I
look
know.
back on the ridiculousness of the Satanic Panic and how it was just founded on lies and allegations, and all it did is destroy people's lives.
It really did, and it still is. That mentality, even though there isn't a structured let's have game show talk shows about it, backing of it, it's still out there. And I know a shop owner here in St. Louis that within the last 2 weeks has had, like, I believe they operate a shop in kind of a shared communal, like, strip mall area, I guess. And the other patrons of their establishment, the other business owners, are like trying to keep people from entering their store because they sell satanic material. And then it escalates from there. And then whenever the shop owners don't want to take action and they want to just keep things quiet so that they can keep collecting rent from everybody, and these people want to take recourse, and it's like, no, these people are coming in and threatening us, our lifestyle, our customers, our way of living. Like, we want protected the way that this country says we should be. That's still going on now.
These are most unusual times, and I've had a few of my previous guests feel that possibly a return of the Satanic Panic may happen.
Well, that's exactly what I was touching on when I said the way that Satanists take part in this transformation of this country is it's going to dictate how we're treated, and it's going to dictate our future. And I don't want to live in a future where I have to be separated from my family because of the danger that would be attached to them, because of what I've written about, the words that I've said and I've written down on paper. Those are the things I've done that they would
ever receive threats?
No, I haven't received threats that I've been like, I need to take this serious. Everybody receives a glare and a look and a murmur here or two. And maybe it's my nature to not take them as serious as maybe they are. But I've never felt as though I need to take action to protect myself because someone else has done. And I see that future very available for us. If we don't show that we recognize America is the home of Satanism, it's where it was founded in the modern day. I don't know if any other country on earth allows Satanism to operate the way that it does here. And people have strange ideas about how free other places are and what you can get away with and what's allowed. And I'll tell you, some of the places that you think you're free, as soon as you start talking about Satan and not believing in the God they believe in, they will treat you different, and not the way that you get treated different here.
This country is founded on occultism. Whether you're talking the Burnout District in Upper New York, or one of my guests, Ronnie Pontiac, wrote a book about America's esoteric history. But I'd also like to bring up Mitch Horowitz's Occult America, where you have the Edgar Casey days and stuff. And I mean, we could keep going back to the colonial times and the Freemasonry, or perhaps even the involvement with the French Illuminati at that time. And you look at the design of DC and everything, and how the founders specifically separated religion from government.
Well, that's the thing that...
Those don't sound like super pious people, to separate religion from how their lives are going to be run. It's like they knew the toils of that, letting religion also run government.
Well, people want to forget the couple hundred years that took place between actual landing, European colonists here, and the actual let's found it with a document that's going to change history. A lot happened there. And yes, even though the very original people might have been pilgrims and escaping the religious persecution that was going on throughout Europe, these things impacted upon the people who frameworked this country. And one of the greatest things that they ever did was the establishment of negative rights instead of positive rights. in this country. You don't get to stop me. I'm not going to guarantee you anything really, but you don't get to stop me from doing the things that I have a freedom to do.
On that note, that's where I feel like maybe our country in the last maybe 5 or 6 years has kind of moved the needle maybe in the wrong direction in that way. I mean, when there was a time when you would allow these Nazi protests to take place in public so people could see just how fucking ridiculous they are. And you know, you could mock it. And it was good to have it out in the front that you could see like those kind of things. And in today's world, no, that's not happening. Like now, sometimes I feel like, we shifted into another alter reality by, with these super colliders or something, in a way that I never thought that the left would be pro-war or against freedom of speech or it's like, I thought we were the defenders of, of freedom of speech, and that everybody gets to say what they want to say, whether you want to hear it or not. I still get to say what I want to say.
See, that is, you're very right. I believe the exact same thing. And I think our politics are based around the concept that people have short memories and people forget the lessons that are learned throughout history when we start believing that we have a moral superiority than others, and we're allowed to dictate what people believe and think. I think
these people that are running the country right now are from the generation that was anti-war.
They are, and they also came from the generation, at least on certain sides of it, that we thought that should be still on the side is, I will fight and die for your right to disagree with me and to say what you're gonna say. And the whole people really have forgotten just how I really don't want to voice this into existence. I don't want to manifest this. When you look at people trying to police speech and put people in jail for memes because they don't like what they're saying and they don't like the thoughts that are in their head, and then have no conception of how outnumbered they are in the voting block, and what happens when you set the precedent of we can jail people for what they think and believe and say, and now you're on the short end of the stick as far as what you think and believe and say spiritually or in any other regard. To give a very blatant example of this, let's start jailing people for hate speech, and then let's allow the massive Christian congregation in this country to vote abortion rights. When you advocate for that, that's hate speech because you're trying to kill a kid, and now you're going to jail for that. Is that the precedent that we want to set? That's a straight line. That's a straight line in what's happening in our culture right now. You start locking people up for what they believe, and they're going to come after you for your abortion advocacy, and then you're going to go to jail for it, and you will have set the precedent. This is the danger of what I say, the way that we interact with this transformation, the way that we engage with this country, the way that we accept that the people that show up and make the decisions and the ones who are going to fight for betterment, regardless of our history, are the ones that are going to get support. It's a dangerous time, to answer your question. I see a lot.
Not to mention the infusion of technology and social media and the keeping tabs on people and collecting your data.
Yeah,
to build profiles, and they even talk like what is it, the social credit score to be built, according to what you post and what you read and what you follow on the internet.
Yeah, and just think that now you did that to keep Nazis offline, and now hyper Christian conservative president comes in, and now you can't go to visit your mom who's dying because you can't buy a subway, train, or airport ticket because your social critic score is low.
You've already flew this year once. You've had your allotment.
Or you've had your loaf of bread for the week. I don't know what to tell you.
Let's shift gears, Martin. And if you don't mind, let's talk about Twisted Tree Abbey. I want you to explain to my listeners what that is and how this spiritual community contributes to the broader landscape of Satanism.
Okay, so kind of to hit back on what I said before, I usually do things, I take on projects when I see things need to be done. And I wrote my second book, Book of the Fallen, because I saw the gap between the atheist and theist communities widening. We weren't finding more common ground. We were chipping away at our edges to where we were getting even farther apart. And that was the driving factor of that book, is to try to develop an ethos that could be shared, that we can see where we see things the same, even if we disagree on the technicalities of how they come about. And Twisted Tree Abbey was, again, my decision to take up the mantle and decide to throw my hat in the ring and see if I'm capable of delivering the kind of satanic organization that is required to give nuanced, mature, responsible, satanic input and insight into our modern culture and faith. And it's because I'm seeing these things happening where that's not the case. And our faith is so much more than trolling. It's so much more than a reaction to what's going on around us. We can inspire, we can change through what we believe without it having to be a negative thing that happened that now we're going to have to try to fix that. And like I said, there's a lot of important work that is going on in that regard, but the detachment from what is greater than us, and really that detachment is what allows the fidelity to what you believe in to be lost, and the perspective to be lost. And now you can do things that are actually counterintuitive to your own movement. And a very clear example of that, and I hate to harp on it, but this is what we do. This is Satanism. It's what our faith is doing right now. And if you look at the debate around abortion and the debate around what's going on legally with that, there's a very clear legal stance that needs to be, established, which is access to healthcare needs to be an imperative. It's, that's just it. And there definitely doesn't need to be a soccer mom or a politician or anyone else in between a physician and a patient's decision on their healthcare. Like that, I think that's something we can all come together with. But when you start looking at the landscape, like I said, around free speech and around hate speech, and let's jail people for what they believe, and then we start making abortion a religious ritual tied to your religion, now you're really creating an atmosphere where dangerous things can happen, and you're completely forgetting the fact that maybe a lot of inspiration can come from the fact that there is, if we are focused on the potential that lies within humanity, the divinity that's in each person, the right of each person to their own body autonomy and to determine their own destiny and everything about themselves, where does that pregnancy fall in line with that? And this is a debate that Satanism should be having really mature, nuanced conversations about, and where the greatest responsibility lies between protecting that future person that may actually really impact the world through their own individual black flame, and protecting the autonomy and the rights of the mother, and keeping the government the hell away from it. Like these are all way nuanced and complicated.
That would apply with that would apply with these vaccine mandates as well.
Absolutely. And see, these are things that once you aren't coming at things from a response angle, and you're actually looking to inspire the culture through the beliefs that you hold deeply, that's the difference in what Twisted Tree Abbey is going to try to bring than what we have currently.
Right. And while we're talking about your book, the Book of the Fallen, you also discuss the potential influence of Satanism in the new millennium. What do you see as the key principles of this Satanism that will shape the future of society?
I'm gonna sound like such a politician here, but I think Satanism can save our country. I really do. I think an army of intelligent, inspired, authentic Satanists who believe what they say and do what they are say they are going to do could impact the future of our country in a way that it would be different than it would be if we don't.
We definitely need, we definitely need more adversaries to the status quo.
Exactly, and that's really over the last few years probably the greatest insight I've gotten into my own satanic practice is just how much how much more Satan may be than an adversary. There's so much more to that, but just how freaking accurate that label is to the world that we've all been born into. The world that has been the construct and the architecture of the Christian world. He is absolutely the adversary to what that has built. When you start to move away from that, he becomes something much different. But to that system and to the people who named him back then, yeah, that was an accurate one. That they pegged it 100%.
And to jump back, how we talked about this country and how it's been formed in Satanism and occultism. I mean, that's totally true because it was founded by people who were adversarial to the status quo. We don't want to live like this. We would rather go out and do our own and be able to express ourselves and do our own thing.
And the status quo they were escaping was the very hyper religious European establishment that, I mean, essentially they were coming out of the Dark Ages. They were coming out of that system of ruling the world.
Well, they only wanted you to subscribe to one flavor, and that was it. Otherwise, you were persecuted.
Absolutely. And that is what this country was built on. So the things that are imperative for Satanism to survive, free speech, freedom of religion, separation of church and state, and I can go down a laundry list of a whole bunch more. The things that are imperatives within our faith are also going to be the imperatives of our country in the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. If those things go away, we will too, and it won't be pretty, and everything else is going to change very radically as well. If we can fight and survive and help retain those things for our country and the world, then we might be able to influence the world in the way it needs to be. And without that, I shudder to think exactly what might happen.
Well, you have the erosion of the middle class, which is going to create even more distance between the haves and the have-nots. And that's totally going to create yet another wall in this myriad of tribal things that we have to subscribe to. And whether it's, political or, like we were saying, whether you're pro shots or anti shots, there are all these ingenious ways of dividing us and splintering it down further and further. We'll find something that me and you don't agree with, and then we'll use that as the rift to never engage in a logical conversation of compromise or, to really come down to a solution, and I feel like in today's world, especially political world, that's really where we're at.
I think something that you're hitting on is something that doesn't exist in this world anymore. In my grandpa's day, I remember him having friends, and they were the son of a bitch friends. And they agreed on nothing, and they would debate and they would argue. But you know what? They still cared about each other.
They protect each other to the end. Yeah.
And they wanted good for each other's families. And if one of them got a promotion, they were right there at the party to call him a son of a bitch and to argue the things they always argue about. But they had that relationship and they had that respect that, hey, you know what? We don't have to agree on everything.
The agreement to disagree. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and that actually was the freedom of our country, is to just be able to disagree, walk off your own way and do your own thing. And nobody had to get put in prison over it. Nobody had to get killed over it. None of that. It was just, you know what? He's a son of a bitch and I love him anyway. And we're getting really far away from that. And Satanism is a good example of that. You know, we are a microcosm of that dynamic. And if we can heal that rift, then we can help others. And if we don't, then we'll go down right along the rest of them. And we'll be one of the first, because I hate to break it to you, we are outnumbered out there. So keep that in mind.
No doubt. And, you know, the underlining thing in your book too is, you know, you see the importance to you of freedom and the freedom of thought, speech, and also to be able to critique Satanism. And, you know, the way that these principles are manifesting in society today, how or what role do you think Satanism will play in promoting them?
Well, I think through some of the work that's already been done, we're going to be a first line in the fight to keep religion from being completely integrated into not so much the federal government, but the daily systems like schools and other public spaces, where this is what impacts people's life every single day. This is what impacts a person's ability to actually live their life as the person they want to be without there being consequences for it. And we are going to be on the front line of sticking up for our rights and thereby sticking up for other people's rights. And if we don't do that, then you're gonna see a theocracy start to creep in a way that we haven't seen before. So the biggest factor that I see Satanists and Satanism playing, particularly in this country, is the slow and hopefully the stop of that kind of theocratic spread, where I can get on board with anybody following any religion almost that they want to. When you integrate that into systems that then impact other people who don't agree, that's where I have to draw the line. And I think that's where our country has drawn the line, you know, historically. So in the future, though, I think the worsening tribal divides that you're talking about are going to make it a lot more available for those kinds of tribalist integrations to happen. And it's not going to be just us fighting for the opportunity of Satanists, but also and this is where I get back to the moral superiority and the intellectual superiority that creeps in to Satanism. You know, we can't just fight for the rights of the people we agree with. We can't just fight for the rights. We have to fight for them all. And right now, there's a real strong current, let's say, of the rights need to be respected and the other ones can go away. And it's not even a thing where people make the distinction between an institutionalized form of something and a personal liberty. You mentioned Nazism before. I don't think anyone should get jailed for it. I don't think anybody, you know, you can be out on the street doing your Nazi thing all you want. That's fine. And I think that's how it should be. When you start particularly in Satanism, and because I'm a leader in Satanism, or at least I hope to really impact the future of Satanism, there has to be kind of a dividing line in there wherein we say, yeah, you can be out there and be as Nazi as you want, but you can't mix your Nazism with our faith because it is so counterintuitive to our faith. It is so antithetical to our faith, and also it's just a pure danger to our religion. I'm not going to have Satanism destroyed because Nazis decide to show up and say, well, we're the Nazi branch of Satanism. That doesn't exist. I'm sorry. You're not a legitimate anything if you're 100% Nazi and then you're also trying to be a Satanist. It just doesn't work like that.
And the same in music too, I think, it's like, they try not to, associate that with, the rest of the music scene,
Well, again, and see, that's the whole dividing line is institutionalized versus private and your own personal liberty. If you want to go be a personal Nazi on the street, that's fine. And I want you to be as Nazi as you want to be. And you can do that in this country because our country's great like that. As soon as you try to institutionalize your Nazism into my legitimate faith structure and religion, then no, we're going to have an issue. And I think that's an example of the dividing line that people need to start being able to have, where you're allowed to do it, but you're not allowed to do it here.
Well, you could substitute that word Nazi for Christians or
exactly
socialists or communism. It's about the others imposing their will upon us.
Exactly. And we'll see that. And that's that is the lesson we have to always remember, in that we have to always protect the right of the person we disagree with and not stifle the right of the person that everybody disagrees with. The person that everybody disagrees with, that's the one that you have to protect, because the second you let that one go, then it's a majority minority thing. And that's when it all comes tumbling down. So it has to be, and that's a lesson that Satanism in particular can really help teach this world in the next decades, if we are good enough to live by it ourselves. Which is, we have to protect body autonomy in all regards, not just the body autonomy of the mother, but maybe also of the baby too. And I'm not saying that is the stance that Satanism needs to hold. I'm saying this is a conversation that needs to be had that isn't because it's become a political football, that because activism has supplanted actual faith and actual belief. And just to wrap it back to the question, that's really what Twisted Tree Abbey and real Satanism were formed to become, and that's a home of genuine and authentic satanic belief and practice.
And so, what is that? Tell us. What is that? Satan
is real. This isn't a metaphor or a construct. This is a thing that exists. Now, however you want to define that, however you want to interact with it and allow it to be an influence in your life, that's fine. But we're not playing any games where I'm a Satanist, but not really. Oh, they couldn't even find the real Satanists to mess with. No, I'm one of those. I am an actual Satanist because Satan is real and I interact with him. The other one is that everyone in the world is a Satanist. We talked about this earlier. We were all born through generations of the spiritual and physical landscape of this world being bulldozed. We were born into the result of that. We were born into that world. And in this world, when you're born, you're a Satanist to somebody. Just because you don't believe what they believe, just because it doesn't matter what you believe. It's just not what they believe. So you're a devil worshiper, you're a Satanist. And that's true about every single person on earth right now. Now, real Satanists accept that mantle, and then they also work towards becoming that Satan as their religion. Everyone else is someone that needs to be protected because they're also a Satanist.
So in your satanic practice, it's much in the way of maybe some other magical pursuits in the way that we're trying to become godlike.
We are. And in particular, I think the highest form of Satanism for me personally is to walk the earth as a Satan for other people, to be a force of them creating their own path, of stoking their own inner black flame, and not being dictated to as far as what the world is, what they can accomplish, and what they are supposed to do. That is a core belief, and that is the thing where I find the most divinity within myself, is whenever I try to inspire that in others. So that is, those are two of the core tenets of being a real Satanist. And the other one is literally to acknowledge that Satan has different names, and he has been worked with throughout history in different ways. And that's going to still be true today. People are going to call him by different things and work with him in different ways. And you need to be open to that and often inspired by that. And we retain the name Satan, though, because it is specifically applicable to the world and the time we live in right now. Now, after, like what you've been talking about, after 50 years of us leaving our mark on this world, and the world has changed, maybe then we've earned the right to use a different name for Satan, because we've actually changed the reality and the existence of that deity. We've changed what it means. But until then, I don't, there are a lot of organizations. Aquino was a good example. He took his Satanism and built the Temple of Set. He went backwards and found a route that he felt was where he found what Satan was in that time, and he built his temple around that. And I see that too. I see Satan's work throughout history and throughout cultures, and even in his enemies, Satan pops up. And so that's why I don't care if you're an atheist, because he'll work with somebody who hates him, let alone doesn't even believe in him.
But you're also saying that you have a personal relationship with Satan, and that you have, and that you commune with him.
Absolutely. Yes.
And how do you prepare yourself for that? Is it through meditation, or are you doing is it some type of ceremonial magic or invocation? How does one talk directly to Satan?
Well, that's kind of why I brought up that it's important that we allow people the freedom to see Satan differently, and work with him differently, just as a rule, because it may change over time. And I think when you're first starting out, it's important to just attempt to make a connection, to reach out, to be open to the fact that maybe Satan is different than what you've believed. And maybe if you have no belief at all in the Christian God, that every time you have called and tried and wanted to make connection, you have gotten nothing, maybe just leave yourself open enough that Satan will answer. And that's why core 101, just bare basics, that's really all you need. And then after you've actually felt that touch, and now you go, oh, there's something more, then you're going to start working into meditation so that you can actually control the things that are going on in your mind and in your body, so that you can recognize changes when they happen and put significant weight on them. Develop a ritual practice where you make time and space in your life to make that connection and feel what it is that you originally confirmed that, okay, maybe there is something there. Because then through consistency, you're going to, build up an ecosystem around you. You're going to immerse yourself in that energy that's going to fuel you forward.
Is that what you're creating during the Twisted Tree Abbey rituals? Like, I saw your stuff, you have like the outside thing going on with the fire, and
the trees and stuff,
It is. We can talk about that in just a second, because it really is kind of like a systematic grouping of exactly what we're talking about into a ritual construct.
Okay.
So I guess the point I'm trying to hit on is it's generally going to be a progression where you start off just feeling and knowing that you are in that presence. And then a lot of times people are going to diverge, and they're going to go down a very devotional path, and it's going to be about how great Satan is, and it's just going to take a very supplicatory and devotional turn. Or they will probably go down more the path I have, where it's a results oriented kind of thing. Like, I know that he's real, and people say that a lot. And I get it, where you can put a lot of no weight to that at all. But in my experience, if I'm being honest about the things that have happened in my life, I have to accept that Satan is real. That's what it is. So I go forward with that knowing, okay, well, if he's real, then I don't need to supplicate myself to him and do all these things to receive gifts. I need to take the things that he is showing me and apply them in my life to further my life. And then if I'm going to be the best Satanist if I'm going to be a satanic leader, then I have to show people how to do the same. So that's kind of the divergence there that happens when people do start getting that daily, everyday, real connection with Satan, and they build that relationship. And Twisted Tree Abbey is also built on a principle of zoetic magic. And that was something that my co-founder and I spent years developing together. And it didn't start out as a project of let's develop a new magical system. It started differently, and it turned into that, which I think it turned out better than we could have ever tried to design one, I would say. And what it does is it really is, like I said, it's a systematic way of building a ritual construct around that practice of creating a connection, developing a relationship, and building an ecosystem, and then applying that relationship and all the energy you've put into it into an actual result, into let's actually do something with it. And in this regard, and in the regard of zoetic magic and ritual, it's a magical process for that. There is invocational parts to it. It begins with the process of loading. So you're going to, whether you take elements from the book and craft a prescription, which could also be called a spell or an invocation, and you're going to use that to build an idol and basically build up a practice of idolatry and altar work. And you're going to build an ecosystem around that, but you can also do it with a spirit that you're communing with, a guardian, a patron, any system that you're working with. You can also just use this construct and this method of magic. So you start with a process of loading, and that is exactly that. Not so much loading a truck, but loading as in a lodestone. You're attracting all of this energy into this idol and into this altar, and you do that for a set amount of time, and then you're going to move from loading into reckoning. And you take that idol that you've built, and you take that sacred object that you've built and you've worshipped over this time, and you take it out into what we call the circle of sacrifice. And that's exactly what you do. You use a demonolatry principle of spiritual activation through fire, and you immolate the idol that you have made sacred. And in that way, you activate a spiritual battery. All that energy that you've built up in that, you unleash into that circle. And from that circle, you turn your back away from the altar, because it's not about devotion and supplication anymore. It's not about even building the connection or having the connection. It's about using the connection. and you light a triangle of fire, which is called the Triangle of Reckoning, and it serves a couple different purposes. One, it's a challenge. It forces the worker to accumulate tools and utilize them in a responsible manner. It makes them approach their magic from a responsible standpoint and actually have honesty about what's going on. It says it a couple times in the book. If you look at what you're about to do and you go, what am I going to do? I'm going to burn my house down. Don't do it. It means that you're not taking this serious enough. So there's that angle of it. And then there is like, if you do it right and you're actually being honest about it and you build a real triangle of fire, there's something to stepping over that fire and letting it lick at your heels so that you can get into the middle of it and receive the reckoning of that spirit that you've conjured. And in that moment, it's not about conquering a spirit or poking it with anything or forcing it to do anything or compelling it, commanding it to do anything for you. It is actually about ingesting that spirit. And the way I like to envision it is you have the altar burning behind you, and that is the battery. That is the source of the fuel just burning off into that ritual space. And you carry with you a beacon, a blazing torch, and that connects you to that altar behind you, and in your other hand, you bring with you a focus. And that is what you're going to be focused on in the time of working that comes next. And that demonic energy or what other energy that you've raised travels from that spiritual battery from that idol that you've sacrificed and activated in the spiritual realm, and it arcs from the altar to the beacon through you into the focus and then back to the altar, and it completes that circuit. And as long as you can stay within that triangle, the more reckoning you're going to receive. And then, as I said, you move from reckoning into the time of working. And that's when now you're expected to produce something from this work. Now, whether it's a book, whether it's music, whether it is just conquering a fear, whatever it is, now you're in a time where you actually have to apply that. You actually have to use it. And that is essentially the entire process of having an active satanic practice wrapped up into a ritual construct that people can use with any spirit, really.
Yeah. Now, that ritual, is that something that you need assistance to perform, or is that something that you can do alone?
You can do it alone. If you do it alone, it ups the ante as far as your personal responsibility goes. I always like to have somebody there with me.
So that's what's recommended, absolutely.
It is. Whenever EA and I were doing it, we had actually several safety mechanisms in place, but then we also had someone there who was our photographer. Even though we had stationary cameras everywhere, she was there to make sure that nothing burned down. She was we're feeling comfortable about somebody else who's not focused on the magic, focusing on the effects of the magic going on.
Right.
And I have done these rituals on my own though. And I have to say it's a game of responsibility, which is something I talk about in both of my first books, Responsibility to the Responsible. You are able to do this magic if you're responsible enough to do it. And if you're not, then you're not allowed to do this magic. That's just the way it is. But I always have three fire suppression methods in place. So I usually have water, I'll have a blanket, and then I'll have a pile of sand or something. Or even if I have thought about it, I'll go and buy like a 5 case of baking soda. And I'll have all three of those staged around the ritual area, just prepared in case. And if you don't have the outdoor space to do this ritual safely, you can convert it to an indoor ritual using candles, even tea light candles, and still get the same effect. Believe me, I've done that too. But the big key is, yes, if you can have somebody there to watch your back, and also just to witness the magic, because it does have an influence.
Yeah, another observation, just to jump back earlier when you were talking about the process. To me, it wasn't unlike, I mean, it had some qualities almost as sigil work, in which you pour all this energy into the sigil and then we destroy it. We charge it and then we destroy it. And in chaos magic, you would put it out of your mind. And really what you're doing to some degree is programming the subconscious to go to work. So some people almost look at it as a means to communicate with your subconscious through symbols. And not that your process got into that or anything, but it just reminded me of channeling all this energy into something to produce a certain result.
Yes.
And then we have to do something with that, and whether it's, throw it in the fire or, destroy it in whatever means, it has to have that full cycle from creation to destruction,
Yeah, it was very much built on a couple different spiritual principles that are like that. Because even when you think about just base spell casting, that's essentially what you're doing as well. You're raising up that energy, programming it, and then sending it out. And again, there is always that kind of like, don't think about it now. And don't focus on it. And that is, it's a subconscious trigger. It's really is a double trick, because it's a subconscious trigger of making sure you're focusing on it by not focusing on it. Yes. It's like you said, it's supposed to then be like, well, I'm not going to think about that, but the magic's working, so let me go do this now. And it's your motivation to get moving. And
when the results come in, that's also really makes you go, wow, like.
Well, exactly. And I'm glad you mentioned that too, because it highlights kind of the theistic nature of this work. It really is, because without that subconscious cue of now don't think about it, because that's also kind of like, that's what proves the magic worked, is that I didn't even think about it anymore, and then the results came in and I'm all good. And we have subverted that a little bit, and we've said, no, we already believe the magic's going to work. Like, I'm done playing that game. I don't need the proof. It's actually built in to the system itself, that if you want to do the best evocative magic you've ever seen, if you want to get the most flame evocations out of a ritual you've ever seen, turn your back on that altar. Turn your back on that altar and not care if they're happening, and you'll get all the confirmation you ever need. And that's what we've done in saying, we're not going to test whether or not the magic's working, because we're going to see it in the results. So after I do this ritual, I'm going to go write the book that I was going to write anyway. And I'm betting that it's going to be 10 times more divinely inspired than if I hadn't undergone this process. And you can take that, and I'm fine with the implications of whether or not you want to treat that as atheistic, theistic, or egregious. I don't care. All I know is it works. I know how it works for me, and if you can see a way that it works in any way, either any of those three ways, I'm fine with that. It doesn't matter to me at all. But that is the process that we've kind of set down, and for me is absolutely confirmed that at the end result, the product is far surpasses anything that I would have dreamt up on my own.
Right. Now you had alluded through that conversation that you had did some work with EA, and how do you say his last name? Coetting?
Yeah.
Can you speak a little about that? How did you come in contact, and what type of relationship you've had?
Absolutely. So we've been working together for a few years now, and it came about really just kind of out of the blue. I had a fan who was a big fan of my books who reached out to me, and he was friends with someone who was like one of the main editors for Become a Living God. And they just kind of like said, hey, we want to get a group together, guys, to talk and be, you know, just like discuss this kind of stuff. And we're like, okay, yeah, sure. So I had probably, if I'm being honest, some negative feelings about the company and his work prior to working with him. And it was through ignorance of not actually having watched any of the videos, read any of the books. It was, oh, look at this thumbnail. And oh, look at that, you know, the copy text, and look at the name of the company. And I very much was looking at it from a shallow perspective. And even though there is so much, and probably a little bit, it was like, damn it, that's a really great name, Become a Living God. That's, you know, we need to do that. So that was my feelings going into it. But I also said, I had enough wherewithal to say, I don't know this guy. Like, I need to, like, plus I'm a Satanist. I'm everybody's devil, and he is too, to a lot of people. So let me at least be open and see how things go. And for probably at least 2 years, we just kind of worked on a weekly basis, not even working, just like we formed a group, and then some people fell away, and it became kind of a core group of 3. And for over 3 years, we met every week and talked for at least an hour. And it was a huge benefit for me, and I hope it was a benefit for him as well, where we got to, one, form the kind of relationship where you can really talk with somebody, particularly about complicated subjects that can get you in trouble if you're too honest or not, you know, if you're not thinking of things in the right perspective and really being delicate about everything. All of a sudden something gets taken the wrong way that you don't actually believe, but now that's what you believe. You know, it's like we had that freedom to have that relationship. And I got to know a guy who is genuine, who cares about the people he works with, who believes the things he says, and who consistently showed up every week to do the work, to have the difficult talks, to have them in a respectful way that nobody got butthurt and upset and had to blow everything up. You know, it was really a proof is in the pudding kind of thing, I think, for both of us, because at that point he had written a bajillion books already, and I had written 2, and I'm relatively obscure. And he really treated me as an equal and listened to the things that I said, and I think allowed me to leave my mark on him, I think, the same way that he has left his mark on me. And through all of that work, it just ended up that, believe it or not, like that process that I just described, we 2 years ago, I think it was 21 in April, so 2 years before we really started writing the book, we stepped into flaming triangles with blank notebook, with blank books in our hand, and then 2 years later came out with our Zoesha. And that was it was the discovery of the magical process that led to the writing of the book about the magical process. So we did all that work kind of in the background until before we even really started doing anything on a public level. But yeah, that's how it's all kind of come about as far as that project goes. And then, yeah, he's coming on board on Twisted Tree as well as one of our augurs. He's going to be highly influential in our magical teachings and just the scope and width and breadth of the information we provide people to develop their own magical and spiritual practices.
You guys are still in contact, and
oh, he's my brother, man. We talk every week. Yeah, he's absolutely my bro.
But the little group that you had that would get together every week, that's no longer happening?
No, as a part of that magical process that led to the book, we ended up being the only 2 that remained. A couple of them dropped pretty damn quick, and then another one stuck it out for quite a while. And if I'm being honest about it, I think some of the magic that we did contributed to that. It's not a bad thing or a good thing. It's just a result. And honestly, it's one of the things that goes back to what Twisted Tree Abbey is about, is everybody in the world is a Satanist. And it's our job to find them their correct path. That path might be Satanism. It might be Christianity. And if it is Christianity, I want you over there as fast as possible. So come here and you'll figure out real quick whether or not this is where you belong or not. And if it isn't, great. Go find what is. I sincerely believe that. I don't believe everybody in the world is meant to be a Satanist, but they've been born into one where they are. And now we need to get them where they actually belong. And I'm not sure if he, that last, member of our group, if he really was meant to be where he was at that time.
And EA's also been hit with a little bit of his own satanic panic and controversy with that case in England, I think it was, or whatever.
Yeah, a mentally ill individual.
Were you friends with him during this period, or was this...
I was. That was kind of right in the beginning phases of it all. And we began working together before it happened, and then right around one of the more crucial times that we were working, it did happen, and I was there for it. And it was a mentally ill person that got a hold of not even his books, because he went back and checked. That person had never purchased a reading from him, a consultation, or a book, but he was a member of their forums. And he went off and took some things probably that he had seen in videos across the internet. Who knows if EA's was one of them. And he murdered 2 women. And EA then was plastered with being the inspiration behind it. The BBC in particular they took basically conversations of him not even discussing sacrifice, but more curses and stuff like that, and wrapped that up into a neat bow of him inspiring these murders.
Yeah, it was a hit job. I saw it. It's like on YouTube or whatever, you can see.
And yeah, they used one clip of him talking about cursing, and in the clip he says that I don't care if you use this curse to kill a person or to kill cancer, it doesn't matter to me. And that can be taken a lot of ways, but someone not in the community wouldn't know that. I'm going to say at least 75% of the people watching that video had never even contemplated or considered that they could target a cancer with that curse. Everybody knows that you can curse a person. He was slipping in a little nugget of wisdom along there with a message that everybody would have expected to hear. Right. And that's something that from the outside looking in, they have no conception of. So that was the result. And then there was also the hit job done by the woman who's obsessed with him, who even admittedly said, yeah, I did that because I'm still in love with him and I want his attention. She literally admitted it. So, and
he's actually been a target in the public, like you said, for a couple of different things, and,
he's still living with the results of it. I don't want to share too much out of school.
No, I understand that's his story and everything, and
Well, I'm gonna say, like, some of the places where you think would be free are not, or at least not for him.
That does not surprise me.
and he hasn't done any crimes. All it is what he's said and what he's written. And plans get changed and money gets put out that doesn't get recouped, and all these things, because governments that you think are protecting free speech of people are limiting it, threatening people's children, all of these things just because they're a Satanist. So that's important things that are happening that do need to be addressed.
Well, there's that jump back to, the whispers say that the satanic panic is back on the rise.
And like I said, the way we respond to it is going to dictate the future for us. And I hope that we're becoming cognizant enough of that we can respond in a way that guarantees everybody's survival instead of guaranteeing their destruction. Because I think the power really is in that regard for ourselves and our own hands.
Now, we talked in pretty good detail about Book of the Fallen, but why don't you tell us about your other book and let's talk about that.
Our Zoesha was the latest release, and that one I kind of outlined the magical process that is contained in that book. So the bulk of it is that magical process, the details of the ritual construct, of
How to perform it.
Yeah, exactly. How to perform it. And then a lot of the story of how it came about, and the thoughts and the divinity that came through us in the unfolding of that information. And then along with that, in that process, we were kind of given a process of taking the I don't want to say some essences of demonic spirits and kind of identifying them through ourselves, kind of distilling some of those essences that can be found within these spirits and giving it a word to them, giving a vocalization to it, and then building a table of that to be used in the future for spell work, invocation work, all those things. And it really does become a pretty comprehensive system of having a magical language to use and a grand ritual construct to employ at the height of when you want to do something big, but then also a magical system that underlies all of it that gives you the purpose behind it and the reasonings behind it that is in line with what left-hand path spiritual people actually believe and want to include in their spiritual practices, as opposed to something like Goetia, which this is a complete inversion and perversion of, wherein a lot of left-hand path practice for Goetia is just stripping away of things and then leaving a base construct. So we approached that from, well, here is an alternative construct, but then what's the meaning behind all of it? Like, why would you alter a certain piece to influence something else more?
And the history of Goetia is not intact. It was lost, and then it's been reassembled in later centuries, and a lot of scholars feel there's a lot missing.
Well, there is a lot missing there, and if we're just being honest, it was written by people who do not believe what we believe. The dynamics that I spend a lot of time talking about the spiritual dynamics of that ritual construct in our Zoesha, and in my mind, you're not going to be able to influence a primordial being of limitless power through the accumulation of a certain amount of tools or the invocation of a certain time of word or anything like that. And if that spirit is going to leave its mark on you and influence you in a way that you're asking, it's doing that because it wants to. And there's no other thing happening besides it's patted you on the back or on the head for doing all the little steps that you did. And it's going to help you because that's what it's decided to do. And if that's the case, then why are we doing all these things? And why are we not doing the things that are built around forging that connection, strengthening it, making it as powerful as possible, and then directing it in a purposeful way? So that really is, that's the complete difference between a goetic working and a zoetic working, beyond just the terminology, meaning basically of that which pertains to death versus that which pertains to life.
Have you had any feedback from anybody who's purchased the book and performed the rituals?
I haven't had anybody share ritual work with me yet, which I'm not surprised. Simply because of how complex the ritual is, and it's been out for about a month now. And if you're actually doing the whole process, you'd almost just now be complete.
You're still using.
So not that, but we've gotten a lot of really good feedback about the Zoetic table of elements that we crafted, and just how natural of a spiritual lexicon it's becoming. And again, for me, that's so cool and confirming because that's not actually what we set out to do with that.
Right.
If I'm telling tales a little bit, that section of the book was conceptualized out of trying to describe to people how to look at these spirits in a completely different new way than what those practitioners of Goetia were doing, and what they believed and what their relationship with God and these demons was. And to do that, it's like there were a lot of lessons that we got taught that confirmed for us that yes, we really need to start looking at these spirits as completely different. Like for an example, Beelzebub being the lord of rot and fester and flies and decay. Yeah, that might be who he is to a practitioner of the art of Paul the Apostle. And that has nothing to do with who Beelzebub is to Martin McGreggor, the theistic Satanist in the 21st century. And if that's the case, then it came to be that like the names themselves are tied up into so much preconception and history and baggage that it becomes necessary to start conceiving of new names. And we've done that in a way, and we've also not shared what demon names are associated with what words of power. And that was a conscious decision because we want people to be able to work with these words and these spiritual elements without having that baggage and that history attached to it immediately. Because you can say, oh, and we provided one example of it, and that was Satan himself. And that was, he translates into Aken Tak Kig, and it's essentially like, it has a couple different Zoetic translations, but that's what we did for the rest of the names, but we didn't give you who the demons are associated with what words. We may in the future, after people get a chance to work with the system and see the results, but that is what those words of power come from. And that's probably the greatest response that we've received so far is from people working with them.
Now, you were talking about maybe doing something later dealing with that. Is that the next book? Can you share any upcoming project or initiative that you're working on, whether it's your writing? The other thing I want to talk about is the fact that you're a game designer.
Yeah, that one got, the game design got kind of backburnered a little bit. I manifested into something in the world that nobody liked, and I needed to backburner that and just kill it. So I haven't gone back to the game design stuff. In 2018, 2019, I was designing a tabletop role-playing game where the Earth had gotten mad at us and released noxious gases that made everybody walk around in a mask all day long. And yeah, that was a little too close to home. I don't know how to try to re-release that game after COVID. So all of that has been backburnered, and I have these two books that I've written. I did a self-deification book with E.A. Coetting as well as Andrea Vitimus, who is a great guy. I love Andrea, and Indy Blackwood as well. We did that one. We've done Ars Zoetia, and then moving forward, I'm probably going to do it might be a solo book about a divination system I've developed called Baphometic Readings. In the deification manual, I developed a set of runes based on the Grigori, the fallen angels. And using those runes and the descriptions that I channeled from them, I've also developed a divination system that's more Baphometic in nature than like a traditional tarot reading. So this is like a subject and then a stop doing this and start doing this to get this result type of system. I'm likely going to write a solo book devoted to how to do those types of readings. I'm going to hopefully get a set of coins made for that as well, so that you can actually use it as a full divination set. And then I have a couple other projects that I'm considering, one of which would be a massive undertaking, but I think I'm pretty set on doing it now, and that is a rework of Paradise Lost. I want to do that from a satanic perspective, and kind of rebring that style of storytelling and like parable into the satanic context into this century. And
There's great speeches in Paradise Lost.
exactly,
Satan makes a great one.
Well,
there's also Beelzebub makes a really good speech as well.
You can see where my love of the diabolican would lead me to want to redo some of those from the satanic perspective. So from that, those are my two written works that I'm pretty set on doing next. Then there will be further Zoesha work getting put out with EA and myself, and I'd almost guarantee that we'll start diving down individual paths of demons and how to start looking at those from these new perspectives. I would not be surprised if Beelzebub is one of the first ones. He really came through and taught us that lesson so strongly. I am absolutely so convinced that Beelzebub is a super angry nature spirit now. It's not even funny. I've been absolutely convinced of it. But that's probably the only other written work I have on the radar that likely is going to happen very soon. And beyond that, I have Twisted Tree Abbey and Real Satanism that are going to be major works. I'm going to be doing a lot more personal work with everybody, readings, consultations, really kind of stepping into a more of a personal role in the community with that. So those are it. And then I'm probably going to graduate college about next year. So that's
and what's the best way to follow you?
Probably these days would be realsatanism.org. And then also I'm spreading out on social media pretty widely. So whether it be Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, if you're, I would look for Real Satanism and you're going to find me.
And what about your books? Are they available on Amazon?
Amazon for anything pre-Become a Living God. So that's Paths to Satan, Book of the Fallen. I'm even in an anthology called My Name is... I'm going to blank on it. My Name is Legion for We Are Many. That one's on Amazon. Paths to Satan and Book of the Fallen are on Amazon. The Deification Manual Spellbook and Ars Zoesha are both exclusively on becomealiving.god.com. I know Ars Zoesha is likely going to hit Amazon sometime soon as well.
Awesome. Martin, it was great having you on the show. It's been quite an experience.
It has been awesome to be here. I had a lot of fun. Please consider me anytime you need another guest. I'm happy to pop on.
Absolutely.
Just thank you so much for having me.
Let me know when your next book comes out.
I absolutely will. Absolutely.
Great. Take care.
All right. You too. Thank you.